Welcome to this dotCMS website, training for how to create a person profile. Once you've logged into dotCMS, you'll need to click on the Content tab and click on Search. This will bring you to the Content dashboard. And to create a person profile, you will need to click into this Type drop-down and select for Person. This will bring up the person profiles that are already published on your website or unpublished as it may be. An orange circle shows that a profile is unpublished, and a circle with a checkbox shows that a profile is published. All right, to create a brand new profile, we're going to click on this triple vertical dots teal button and select for Add New Content. This is going to bring up the person dashboard. And there will be a few tabs that we'll need to go through to complete this process. Any fields that are highlighted red are required and need to be filled in. One of the most important fields in dotCMS is the host field. You need to make sure to select for your website folder where you would like this person's profile to be saved. So I'm going to click on this drop down, click on the plus sign, and select for that website that I would like this profile to be saved within. Now you don't need to drill down into your website to a specific folder. You can just save this profile into your main folder. Next is the title field, and this is where you're going to type in the name of the person as you would like it to appear in the back end of dotCMS. So I'm going to type in Jane User. First name and last name, you'll notice the URL title field automatically populates. Now the summary field is not required. That's because most directories typically show a person's name, their title, their phone number, and their email address. They don't tend to show a summary. But it is something that you can insert if this is something you would like to do. Next are a few fields related to images. To actually have an image show on a person's profile, you will need to upload that image into this image field. There's also an option for a horizontal image. This is typically formatted so that if this particular person's profile is shared on social media, that a horizontal image has been formatted for that purpose. And then a square image is often used in different homepage options for showing content, and it would show up as a square. The horizontal image and the square image, those particular fields, those photos would need to be custom cropped into those particular dimensions before uploading. The actual image for the person doesn't necessarily need to be custom cropped. There may be times when that may be necessary if there's extra headspace at the top of a photo or extra space on the side of an image, but most often you can upload the original version of a person's photo and have it show properly in the image field. Now, so we want to get a photo to actually show up on the screen. We're going to click on the Browse button, and this brings us to a Select a File window. We're going to click on the plus symbol, click into our website folder, click into our Uploads folder, and click into our Images folder. Now, you may already have somebody's, this particular person's photo that you would like to use. If you do, then you can select it right from the screen or type in the first couple of characters in the filter, and that will pop the image up. Otherwise, you can upload new file, and you can upload this image from your computer. I have an image I'd like to use already, so I'm going to select for that image. If you do want to upload that image and learn how to do that, there is another tutorial that will walk you through that process. So now this image is showing on the screen. There's also an option to remove, so that if you ever edit this person's profile, they give you a different photo to use, you can select the remove button and then rebrowse for this particular image. All right, the next field that we need to pay attention to is first name, and we're going to type in the name of that person, Jane, and then in terms of middle name, if they have one they'd like to include or a middle initial, you can insert that. And then the last name of the person, honorific suffix. This is where you could put in if they're a senior, if they're a junior. For an honorific suffix, it could also be an academic title like PhD, MA, MBA, that kind of thing. And sometimes people have specific certifications like Lead AP and whatnot, AICP. Those would also be credentials you could include in this honorific suffix field. Alternate name field, this is for people who have an alternate name that they're known by, a nickname. Could be the person is from another country and they've selected an English first name as a way to more easily identify themselves, then you can also include that in the alternate name field. Could be the person got married after they started working at the university. You could include their maiden name in here if that was something they were also known by, if they changed their last name, that kind of thing. The alternate name field will not, that content will not show live on the profile, but it will populate if that content is searched for related to a profile. Now roles, if a person literally works for one unit on campus, you're not going to have a role that you will need to create for somebody. If they work for multiple units, or they have two different titles within an organization that they want to highlight specifically on their profile, then that would constitute this use of roles. I'm not going to go through how to create a role in this tutorial. There will be a different tutorial that walks you through this process if that's something that you need to do on a person's profile. Now, address. This is where you're going to type in the address where the person's office is. So for my purposes, I'm going to type in human ecology building, and I'm going to include the street address and the room number, as well as the city, state, and zip. Now you may be wondering, why am I typing in all of this information? Normally it's just like human ecology and then room 101. Because for those of us who are familiar with campus, we know our buildings have all these different kinds of names and we just need to get somebody to a room number in a building. Well, the reason for this and all the extra information is if we actually click into a person's profile, you're going to see that their location information is actually hyperlinked. If we click on the button for that, it's going to take us to Google Maps where we can navigate to where this person's office is located. So that's why it's essential that you include, at the very least, the street address as well as the city, state, and zip code. All right, job title, you'll type in whatever the title is for this person, their email address, their MSU Net ID. Why this field is important is because dotCMS can pull to see if there's multiple profiles existing for someone. And if you have filled in this field and they already have a profile existing in the system, it will not allow you to duplicate that profile. Now, why you may not see that particular profile showing when you go in to create a person's profile is because it may be saved in another website's folder that you do not have permissions for. So if a profile does exist on someone else's website and you need to have some content edited or added to that particular profile, you'll need to contact that particular unit to help you make those edits, or there's another option to share that profile between different websites if the need arises. All right, fax number, you can type that in. Whatever that might be. And then a telephone number. Cell phone if they want to include that. Organization, you would fill in this information if the person doesn't work at Michigan State University or if they don't have a if they work for another unit within the university. So for example, if they don't work within the College of Ag and Natural Resources, they probably don't have a dotCMS website, and so we're going to need this organization name to show up because we won't be able to make a relationship to this particular organization and have the name appear on their profile page. Now the content tab here, the content area, this is where you're going to type in the biography information for this particular person. It uses a WYSIWYG editor. If you would like to learn how to use this WYSIWYG editor, this is what allows you to format this content on the person's profile. There is another tutorial that will walk you through that process. But for my purposes, we can say Jane user is dotCMS website editor with A&R communications and marketing. Now, there may be more detailed information you might want to include. You can make hyperlinks, you can embed videos, you can include additional content that might be over and above just a basic biography description. All right, so that takes us through the content tab. Next is what's called the faculty tab. And this has a few fields that are specifically related to person profiles you may be creating for those who may be considered faculty. This would allow us to include some information about their area of expertise, their degree, and allow for uploading of a CV. Now, what this looks like on a faculty's profile is this is how that content will appear on the screen with their area of expertise, their degrees, and then you can click on a link to download their CV. If the person's profile that you're creating is not a faculty member, you can just skip this tab. The relationships tab, this has several different ways that you can create a relationship for a person. What is most important is related to organization works for, if your website is considered, quote, an organization site, or if it's considered a data set website, you would want to make a relationship to this particular person so that it can show up appropriately on your website. A lot of websites include what's called a person listing widget. This is an example of a person listing widget, and there are specific criteria that allows for these profiles to appear on these widgets. So for example, to have a profile appear on this particular faculty widget, they need to have a relationship made to the School of Planning, Design, and Construction. And the School of Planning, Design, and Construction happens to be an organization. So let me just briefly go over relationships. This is also covered in another tutorial, but it'll be helpful to just give you some background information. So organization works for, these are going to be departments or main units within the College of Ag and Natural Resources. This would also be the MSU Extension main site. Data sets would be considered subsets of organization websites. For example, academic programs like construction management would be considered a data set. Topic website would be considered a data set. A county extension website would be considered a data set. All right, and you would make a relationship to that particular site. So for my purposes, I need to create an organization relationship for my demo site. Now it's going to bring up some matching results for my particular website folder that I've selected for. So I'm going to check this relationship that I would like to make and select the relate button. And now my organization is showing up under the organization parent works for. Now farther down on the page, you're going to see organization member of. This member of is related to websites that have person listing widgets that house committees where someone could be a member of a committee or a member of a specific group. That would be different than a member of an organization like a main unit or a member of a data set. All right, now there are several other relationships that you could make. Article, they might be an author of an article, they might be an author of a digital document, they might be a featured person in an article, they might be a point of contact for an event, that kind of thing. Now, when you're creating those other types of content, like an event, then you can select for a relationship for a person to be a point of contact. And it's much easier to do that when you're making those, creating those other types of content rather than doing it within a person's profile. All right, that covers relationships, and next we get to categories, where you can select 4 different types of tags and categories that you might need for a person's profile. Again, I mentioned that some websites use person listing widgets, and if they do, there may be specific criteria for how that information gets pulled into those widgets. And if there is, then you would need to click to select for a category. And you will see the different types of categories that you can select for. My purposes, this would be a staff directory. So I would select the staff option and then click the close or cancel button. And now this staff category is showing. For person tags, this would be related to what I would term a person's area of expertise. It would also be related to the organization that they might work for. And my recommendation as a best practice is that you have at least 1 tag showing for every person profile that you create. At the very least, it should be related to the organization that the person works for. So for my purposes, that would be A&R, communications, and marketing. For this particular person, it would also be related to their area of expertise. So we'll say this is related to dotCMS and dotCMS training. And you can see that there's pre-populated tags that I can select for that. And now let's say we want to create a brand new tag, something that's not showing. Let's type in website. Now, there is no tag for website training, so all I need to do is click the enter key on my keyboard, and that actually creates a square around my tag, showing that it's now going to be an official tag once I save my draft or publish it. That's how you create a new tag. All right, now date. It's very important that you do not select for a system publish date or a system expiration date, as this can cause some problems if you ever need to unpublish a person's profile. So it's best just to leave this tab alone and not make any changes to the date tab. Now we've gone through all the tabs related to this person's profile, and we need to take some actions here. You can save draft, it'll save it to the back end. You would then need to lock that content. You can check the links. If you click the check links button and you have hyperlinks showing in your biography area, the content field, then this would check the hyperlinks, and if there's any errors to those links, it would pop those up for you to be able to make changes to. If not, it would just publish your content live. And then there's also the publish button, which would again publish your content live. So I'm going to say that we're ready to publish this content. I don't have any hyperlinks in my description content field, so I'm just going to click publish. URL title must have a unique title, so it looks like there's already been a Jane user created before, so I just need to click publish one more time and it should work this time. All right, now my content has been saved and it's been locked because I clicked the publish button. I can click the X button here and we'll see that Jane user has a green circle with a check mark, which means that that profile is published live. Whereas this particular entry for Jane Professor is unpublished because it is showing with an orange circle. That is how you create a person profile.